But my son started sleeping at night, and I kind of went, "Oh, right, I better my career, yeah." So the webmaster, the guy who redesigned my site for me, he said, "Oh, and we can put a Twitter feed right on the homepage." And I went, "Yeah, I don't Twitter." And he goes, "No, do it, Richard, do it." And I started, and it's easier than I thought. And I will say, much against my expectations, I am far better informed about the world than I was before I was tweeting, because it forces an awareness on you. You know, you go and you click on it, and you go to have a look at somebody, and you've got to be careful who you follow. If you follow the right people, you click on it, and they found something fascinating that's going on in South America, and you go, "Oh, I'll go read that." And it's a horrible time sink. I mean, you spend. But if you think about how much time you'd spend reading a broadsheet newspaper cover to cover, I doubt I'm spending any more time than that. And you do, it's targeted, because you tend to find the stuff that interests you because you're following people who are interested in things that they're interested in. So it is useful, yeah, I have no doubt. I mean, whether I'll ever get a really cool science fictional idea out of it is another matter. I haven't yet.
Well, you can ask it questions. Well, you can ask Twitter questions. It's people, you're asking people, and they'll spread and get answers. I wanted to know if there'd ever been an iceberg declared as a state. This iceberg breaks off a country, it's floating in the ocean. Who owns the iceberg?
Yeah.
It turns out, as it turns out, Germans had actually done this, and they actually had some icebergs which lasted a couple of years, and they had postal districts for the iceberg. Being German, had postal districts for the iceberg. You know.
So was there really on them? Were there people
well, you
research groups?
don't necessarily have to have people on them, but yeah. So
it works also for
yeah.
little pieces of earth, of soil, if they are falling from a river's side, so you could have an island.
That's right. There's
like alluvial sands and things.
There's an ongoing argument I think it's between Japan and Korea about islands that appear and disappear because of this, and then building giant concrete structures, you know, to stop the flow of the island or divert it to make sure that it ends up in your territory. You could get very Ballardian into this kind of thing. So no, I find it interesting, but also it puts you very directly in contact with people on the ground, which is the most interesting thing. But also, as I say, because you can ask questions and you get answers from people who are the experts in things. I've had CIA analysts, and they didn't say they were CIA analysts because they're not allowed to, but they were. Police officers in America answering questions and all kinds of stuff, because it's amazing what people know. And they don't necessarily know it because that's their job. They happen to know it because they're interested in this stuff. So they're really interested in stuff. Being interested. And you can tap into this sort of thing. Suddenly they've got somebody to tell them, you know, they can tell it too, and it's great. So it works both ways. So it's really useful. There is a problem with curation. Remember Tamagotchis? You know, there's watches you had to feed. You didn't feed them, the little character in the screen died. All over the world, it's full of corpses of Tamagotchis because nobody curates and nobody looks after them anymore. I worry sometimes spending too much time on Twitter, because it's a social profile thing. You know how well you're doing because it tells you how many people are following you, how many people are retweeting something, repeating something you've done, retweeting. How many people have just said I like it or done it right, you know. So there are all these kind of social status things, and you can get anxious. There's a kind of interesting experiment in yourself about what's my anxiety state today. How often am I looking at it, putting some cool thing out that nobody's got? They should like it. It's cool. Why not?
Oh no,
I think I'm 14 again. But no, the last few novels have little nuggets of information in Twitter. Some of them just I randomly followed a link about. I follow a bunch of science journalists. This is my major resource now. There's some really great science journalists out there, and the best ones are all on Twitter, tweeting stuff about what they've written about, what their colleagues have written about, a paper they found, and it's fabulous because it's just they're a filter, and they come up with all this stuff. I'm going, yeah, I can use some of that. Or it's just interesting, and use a bit of that.
Well, and the fact that they are scientists and science journalists, as you say, it gives that certain amount of legitimacy to it.
There's that, and also they can explain things in ways that, because that's their job if they're science journalists, to actually make things that seem incomprehensible, comprehensible, make complicated things less complicated but still true, which is a really good trick. Otherwise you're doing what that scientist friend of mine called telling lies to children when you simplify stuff too much. And most textbooks are full of lies to children. University undergraduate level are full of lies to children. Because when you're an expert in the field, as I was briefly in one field, I knew everything in every textbook about my particular field. It was not only out of date, some of it was frankly wrong. So it's kind of worrying when you think about it. So is this true for all history books as well? And is this why our politicians are so badly informed?
Well,
so there's that, but then you're getting stuff directly from people who've talked to the scientists who've done things, because journalists always go to a primary source to check the story. So these guys have actually checked the story of the person who's done the stuff. So you're getting it quite close to where it is. So this is really, really, really good, rather than having a subscription to a popular science magazine or randomly thumbing through a textbook hoping you're going to find something, and not quite sure what you're looking for. Or that can be interesting too. I kind of like serendipity. But actually, Twitter actually adds back, doesn't it? It adds back something that I used to do in libraries. You go to find a book, and next to it will be an even better book you didn't know about. Right. I think we've all had that experience. Twitter's like that in a way. It drops in your lap that you didn't know you needed until there it is. I want that.
And the other thing about it, I think it's interesting, especially with science stories and things, is you're very often getting it before it breaks, or it's something that isn't ever going to really break big. Because I remember seeing an article by I think it might have been Ben Goldacre, anyway, but a guy basically saying that he was a science correspondent for a broadsheet newspaper, and he said you can tell when something is breaking because they take you off it and they give it to a general correspondent. And he said, and that's the point at which the public ceases to know what the hell is really going on. Because he said, I'm the guy who can actually, as you say, can actually explain it. They take it away from me and they give it to some sensationalist hack who will produce, an overwrought piece of copy, which will be really dramatic and exciting to read, and it will sell all the newspapers, but it will have nothing to do with the reality of the situation. And that in Britain, that's what happened with the MMR vaccinations. There was this sudden panic that MMR vaccination caused autism in children. And that's exactly what happened, that basically the science writers were all saying, there seems very little evidence to support this. And that wasn't what the newspapers wanted written. So they pulled the science writers away from it and they gave it to the general journalists. And the general journalists ran with it. And you've got Ben Goldacre as a case in point. He's a doctor who's also a journalist. And he said he had friends he knew in journalism, ringing him up saying, about this MMR thing, what are the possible ways that could work? And he's going, well, I'm pretty sure it doesn't work because I haven't really looked at it, but to me it doesn't make any kind of scientific sense at all. And all right, well look, thanks very much, Ben, bye. And then he said they would then go and get it from someone else and eventually they find someone prepared to say something inflammatory, and that's the story they ran with.
So you could say that they add something but not necessarily something good. These new media.
Well, no, because I think the point with Twitter is that, as you say, it's a sort of, it's under the line. It's individual people just communicating with each other. Very often, you're getting stuff that, because it's not hot, you're much more likely to get a realistic vision of it, a realistic picture of it.
It's not only people.
Yeah.
Organizations or.
Yeah, as I say, it's without filter, and as Richard was saying about Ben Goldacre getting a filter between him and the public, which is this other journalist. Twitter takes that filter back away again. I was watching the Comet Lander, that the European Space Agency just landed a little lander on a comet, if you like. And I was watching a live feed from somebody who's a journalist who is in there, and she's very good on space as well, knows how to ask the right questions. So not only did I know exactly when it landed, because there's no lag in Twitter either, unlike newspapers, I also knew what happened, when it obviously hadn't quite landed the way it did. Yeah, got straight back up again, because who knew comets are hard? We thought they were fluffy, but it turns out they're not. And I was interested because I've written about bodies that are like guys, and I say, oh, I wonder if they figured it out, that it's actually, if you put something in a deep freeze, it's going to get quite hard.